It is so exciting to have you here for what will prove to be, I think, a very fun night and a welcome time. My name is Sam Kaplan. I am the director of the Center for Jewish Studies at UNC Asheville. We will erase on the cameras any evidence that anyone brought food or drink in here. And keep in mind, if anything happens and we start laughing too loud and you need to escape, there are these doors. There are also these doors that are currently closed. They'll take you straight out the building if it just gets to be too much hilarity and you need to get out quickly. Please turn off your cell phones or put them in airplane mode so that we don't have any interruptions, especially with the exciting stories to come. When the event is over, in the lobby, you'll have the opportunity to purchase books, if you would like, by Jerry Sternberg with some of his articles from Mountain Express. And there'll be rugelach and honey cake and all kinds of happy things outside the doors. I just want to say as the director that I'm just so glad to partner with Carolina Jews for Justice to bring you the wit and wisdom of Jerry Sternberg. But let me first invite Abby Lublin, the executive director of Carolina Jews for Justice, to this podium.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Yeah. Oh, I love instant feedback, oohing and eyeing, and we are an effusive people. Please lean into that. First of all, thank you for being here, for putting aside whatever needed putting aside, whatever arrangements you needed to make, things that you ironed, whatever it took for you to be here. Thank you. It's beautiful to see a full room of people enjoying something together, so thank you for being here. I want to thank Sam Kaplan from the UNCA Center for Jewish Studies, who's been an amazing, amazing partner. Sam, look at the party you're hosting. Well done, well done. I also really want to acknowledge our ambassadors, a crew of people. It takes a committee, y'all. This is the committee that really put this together. So I want to acknowledge CJJ statewide organizer Lisa Forehand, who's still registering, checking in people right now. Maybe you can come wave. Hey! And you see folks wearing CJJ tags, and anybody who was involved in this committee, I'd ask you to please stand. I know you're really wonderful, humble people who don't like to be acknowledged, but tough. Please stand so we may acknowledge you. Thank you so much. Marlene, that's you too. Yes, putting everybody out of their comfort zones. I'm kind of known for that. I also want to really thank folks who are here from Pisgah Legal Services, Planned Parenthood, Helpmate, and United Way. Thank you for your support of Jerry, of this event. And also, Jerry's support of those institutions is a part of their story, too. So I want to acknowledge the mutual support of Jerry and these super significant, important institutions that deserve our support and resourcing all the time. I am Abby Lublin. I'm the executive director of Carolina Jews for Justice here in North Carolina. You have info at your seats, a little more, so I'm not going to read what is right in front of you. That is for you to take with you. There are QR codes. I know, we're so hip. That is, you take your phone. I know I have wonderful parents coming into this century as well. One of them's here. You put on your camera, and you hold it over that square thing, and it will automatically pull up a link. And there are two there. There's one to our calendar of events and one to our donation page. Feel free to explore both of those. So a little bit about CJJ. And I also want to say we're called Carolina Jews for Justice. That is a wide definition. We are Jewish. We are Jewish. We are Jew-friendly. We are Jew-adjacent. We are non-Jews. So you're all CJJ tonight, and we encourage you to continue being part of our beautiful community beyond tonight as well. So CJJ, very quickly, we educate, we advocate, and we take action for a more just, a more equitable, and a more compassionate North Carolina that we know is possible. Can I get an amen, ashe, hallelujah on that? And it can be hard. It can be real hard to believe that a more just, equitable, and compassionate North Carolina is possible. But we know that it is, right? So I want to share in my intro with Jerry that in some ways, CJJ, we are also storytellers, right? So we have and take and share stories, experiences of inequity, of injustice, and we study them and we share them. And just as with all stories, we make meaning, right, from stories, and we take action. We do that. We also call ourselves kind of in the leadership business. So people who are passionate about things, we help build up their skills to really take their action further and really lead. But these are stories. With these stories, right, that we hold, that our neighbors hold, that our friends hold, we can speak truth to power, right, and make change. So some of these stories might be being harmed by the lack of expanded Medicaid access. This could be needing basic care and autonomy of our reproductive bodies, right? Yeah, if you could feel free. Yeah, this could be telling stories about what a well-funded, supported public education system could look like, right? These are all stories for change, right? And I don't mean 4 quarters for $1 change, although that is also really helpful because this change takes change. So if you can support and help resource CJJ, thank you. And also, if you see yourselves as part of this story, for example, what we are coming together to do in the 2024 election to make sure as many people can vote as possible, especially those targeted for disenfranchisement, which is all of us. Please make sure you reach out to some of our ambassadors and people and get plugged in, because we know we can only do together what we can't do alone. So about stories. Together, right, collectively, we are creating a story of a North Carolina where all people can thrive, right? And we want future generations, I want you to imagine this with me, right? Future generations to tell the story of what we did to get everybody what they need in North Carolina, right? Stories are where we make meaning. It's where we have connection. If you think about it, stories are what you can take with you anywhere, ready? Especially people of a diaspora, people of a diaspora of a diaspora. You take stories with you, and every culture on this planet has an oral tradition, right? Of teaching, of making meaning together, right? Through our stories. So I want to tell a brief story about a story and also recognize the exceptionally excruciating times in which we live as a way of kind of maybe opening a little pressure valve for folks in the room, right? And then coming back in together. I'm going to tell a brief story. So I'm the executive director of Carolina Jews for Justice, right? And we're part of a larger kind of ecosystem of a lot of organizations that we work with on various issues in North Carolina. And we have a relationship with an organization called Muslim Women For, through doing reproductive justice work together. We showed up together to fight SB 20, to do faith lobby days together. And 2 weeks ago, I was able to reach out to Layla Ali and say, hey, let's connect. Because we had a relationship through doing the repro work together in North Carolina. And she and I spent almost 2 hours on the phone together, crying, sharing what our communities are experiencing, what we personally are experiencing, what's being done in our names without our consent, what we're worried about, what we're hearing from family and friends, how we're holding our people. And we had more in common than anybody else. We even shared that on 9/11, she was in first grade, which dated her and me, and came home to find her parents running around the house looking to see what they could sell because they were worried that they were going to get kicked out of this country. And I was a teacher in New York City, very close to the center of impact, and spent weeks, months holding with people, praying and protesting not to go to war in our names. we shared these stories and uplifted our shared humanity. Tonight, we're here to listen to Jerry's stories. The oldest Jew in Asheville, right? This is like the Mountain Express columns live in person, the gospel according to Jerry. And though I don't share Jerry's whole identities and experiences, and he very much reminded me that I am not from or of here, and I'm a carpetbagger. Although I am mountain born, Jerry, I am mountain connected, and deciduous trees are my jam, so got something there. And though I aspire to be the Altacocker that I will never be, right? Though we don't share the particularities of each other's lives, we share, his stories resonate with a deeper humanity, right? I can connect with his stories about love and loss, of being raised by a place and a time, of how individuals and communities navigate both legacy and change. And so, Jerry's stories are very particular to Jerry, which is why we're all here. And also, I want us to think about the deeper shared humanity in everyone's story. A little bit of logistics. You have some cards and pens, and those of you not sitting at tables, you can just raise your hand. We are going to hear from Jerry, and then we'll have a Q&A that I will read questions. We have found this is a great way to get more people's voices heard in a Q&A, which is to write your question on a note card, and our wonderful ambassadors will collect them, and we'll look through them, and we'll see where there are patterns. Maybe a lot of you have the same question that might not get asked if we just have people kind of popcorn. It's also a way to get some of our shyer folks who don't want to be on the spot to share. So this is one way that we find works really well for a Q&A. It also helps us keep us focused on questions. So we'll do that. And also, please stay for the schmooze. The schmooze is a way of connecting. As my mom says, it's Jewish social media. So please stay for the schmooze. There are snacks, there's delicious food, there's honey cake, there's regalach. Also, that's where I encourage you to connect and ask each other maybe, what did you hear in Jerry's stories? What resonated with you? What do you connect with? And really try to tap into our connection and our deeper humanity, because we need all of that. A couple of other technical things I will share. I've been asked to share the video. This is being recorded. Hey, now you're seeing me do that? That's really awkward. It will be up on the Ramsey Library website. They have a YouTube channel on the Ramsey Library site in 4 to 5 weeks. Yet, we will be following up with an email to anyone who has registered for this event, so we will also send you the link. So please, tomorrow, please don't email us, where's the video? It was great, I want to share with everybody. It'll come, okay? And then you get to build suspense for weeks, right? Even better. So that was about the video, what we will send. In the schmooze, find folks who have the CJJ tag. We are happy to talk about what we're here to do together, what you care about. And one last thing I will say is that listening is an act of love. So let's all participate in giant public love and give Jerry a big, warm round of applause. Jerry Sternberg.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the Carolina Jews for Justice.
You gotta like kiss it, basically. Yeah.
How's that? Is that better? And the Center for Jewish Studies for inviting me here tonight. I suspect that this invitation came as a result of the articles I'm writing in the article in the Mountain Express, and I've already been accused of being the Asheville Jewish wokester. Because I do have some stories that make some people uncomfortable. Now, for you older people, you know that the first thing we do when we get together is we have an organ recital. Yeah, my heart is here, and my kidney, oh yeah, I want to tell you about that. So I have a recitation for you all. I have a chronic sinus infection. And so if I'm clearing my throat and I'm coughing and I'm harking, don't worry, I ain't gonna croak. And I hope that you'll just consider those little incidents punctuation. I was born to a Southern Reformed Jewish family, and my parents were both born in this country, and they tried very hard to fit into the community. We didn't want to make too many waves. Jewish people, in those days at least, their biggest social activities were usually visiting other Jewish people. And Jewish people, there's things they like to do that they're not big drinkers, or they weren't in my day. They like to play cards, they like to eat, they like to schmooze. She used that word tonight. That means talk for those who haven't been translated.
Gotta get you right on that mic.
How's that?
Gotta love, like kiss. There you go.
All right. See, I got these extra hearing aids in. I can't tell y'all what you're listening to. So, my mother was a Southern belle from Atlanta, Georgia. And she didn't like things too Jewy. We just didn't want to irritate anybody. And I remember when we would ride on the bus or we'd be out in public, we never talked about things Jewish. If we had to, we used the word wedge. That's Jew spelled backwards. My grandfather came here to the United States in 1900. He was a cattle trader from Germany. And he came through the port of Houston, came to Asheville, got in the hide business, was very successful, and had a big house on Victoria Road. And like I said, the Jews just loved to play cards. He had a regular Wednesday night poker game. And for some reason, the chief of police decided to raid his poker game. And they came in, made this big bust, and the chief of police says to my grandfather, he says, "I want the names of all the people at this table." And my grandfather says, "This is Mr. Olive, this is Mr. Bass, this is Mr. Gimmel, this is Mr. Dollet, and this is Mr. Hay." For those who don't speak Hebrew, this is the first 5 letters of the Hebrew language. Despite our trying to be low-key, there was always the Jewish paranoia growing up. I heard names like the Ku Klux Klan, Father Kaplan, and our own beloved silver shirts, Mr. Pele, who was on Charlotte Street with a very virile anti-Semitic press. We were very self-sufficient. The community worked hard. Many of them were retailers, and we took care of our own community. We didn't go on the outside. If somebody in the community needed to borrow money, if they needed a job, if they needed help with food, transportation, we did it within our own community. And we even had a special fund set up we called a Schnorrers Fund. And a schnorrer is a person who asks for money. They're not necessarily beggars, they just come around and ask for money. And we had a phenomena in the South. There were these itinerant rabbis who were known as Meshuliks, or they were collectively Meshulachim, but they came south and they would go around to all the Jewish name stores they can find, and asked for money, and they always had a picture of a synagogue over in, or yeshiva over in Israel they were collecting money for. They were very dedicated. They rode the bus. They kept kosher as best they could, and hoped always to get invited to a family to have a kosher meal. And they tell the story that in this small town, one of these rabbis got off the train, and he had on the big stremmel, what they call a lunga, the payas and the lunga board and the big black suit. And he gets off the train, and he's walking toward town, and all these kids are following him. And finally he looked around, and he says, "What's the matter? You never saw a Yankee before?" When we kids were in the school system, we were definitely evangelized. We got to school in the morning, we said a Christian prayer, we sang Christian songs, and every assembly we had, almost every one of them, we had a preacher that would come and tell us that we were going to suffer some great terrible fate if we didn't become believers. And this was a difficult thing. Our teachers we loved our teachers, but we got a mixed message. When the teachers were preaching Christianity and we had Judaism at home, there was one incident, and I think I wrote about this. When I was about the 4th grade, the teacher put a big whiteboard up. It had the name of all the children. And one morning we come in, and the teacher says, "How many children went to church?" And everyone that held their hand up got a star. "How many children went to Sunday school? How many children went to Vespers?" And each one of them got a star. Well, there was 2 or 3 Jewish kids in the class, and when she noticed that there were no stars beside the Jews, the chart disappeared. There were 2 major things that I felt in my life that changed my life in this community. The first was when we built the Jewish Community Center of Asheville. It happened about 1940, and we bought an old house on Charlotte Street, still located, the location's the same. And it was, for us kids, one of the most magical things we'd ever seen. We didn't have to be careful, we had our own Jewish culture, songs, plays, entertainment, and most important, we got to interact with other Jewish children. We also, they also built a social hall, and some benefactor gave us the money for that, and it was very serendipitous because in 1941, as you remember, we had Pearl Harbor and the war broke out, and the Jewish Community Center became a Jewish Welfare Board, which was the same as the USO. How many people remember the USO? We entertained Jewish servicemen. We had several bases in this area. Down around Greenville, particularly Fort Bragg, I believe it was. And we had 2 hospitals here, Oteen and more general. And we had several Jewish servicemen in the area. Most of them were really kids. They got drafted right out of high school at 18 years old. And the biggest part of them came from big cities like New York City, Newark, and Chicago. And they came down to South, and they were shell-shocked by the Jim Crow mentality of the South. And they just could not understand because they'd been in very big Jewish communities, and they didn't know any difference. So when the families would invite these young men to come and stay in their homes And Friday night, they got a Sabbath dinner. And Saturday, a tour of the town. And Saturday night, we had a big dance, and all the local ladies came, and we truly entertained them. And I think that from those young people, several famous people came here. But one that stayed at our house was the star of Fiddler on the Roof. Who knows the name? Zero Mostel stayed at our house when he was a kid. During these years that I grew up, the Jewish community, one of the things that offended them most was the attitude of the country clubs here. In 1890, the Asheville Country Club was built, and only in 1930 or 31, 32, when there was a depression, they took in 8 Jewish families. Thereafter, for generations, every Jew that applied was blackballed. Now, you don't have to take my word. I'm going to show a little evidence. John, will you put on the first? I'm going to read this for you. First, let me tell you, Joseph Dave was one of the most beloved men in our community. He was a great industrialist, built Dave Steel, and of course they were a very important part of our war effort in this part of the country. He was highly respected, a gentleman of all, at every instance, generous, and he was a member of the club, and he invited Mr. Charles Roth to joined the club, put his name up for membership. Mr. Roth was involved in the early days of the movie industry and as a film distributor, and he built, for those who might remember, he built the Biltmore Plaza, and he built a bowling alley in Biltmore. He was a fine gentleman. Here's the letter. You can read along, or I'll read. Dear Mr. Dave, the application which you submitted for Mr. Charles Roth was presented to the Board of Directors at their regular monthly meeting on Tuesday, February 10th. I was advised by the board to write you and point out that we have a specified number of Jewish members in the club, and at this time, this classification, let me repeat that, classification is closed. As soon as there is a vacancy, I will advise you, yada, yada, yada. We had been reduced in the eyes of many as a classification. Now, let me point out that there weren't that many Jewish people who wanted to join the country club. They didn't have the money. Country clubs are nice, but they didn't have the money. But the idea that they were rejected for one reason, because they were Jewish, was certainly an affront to the community. Now I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. In 1966, I think, we had a second country club here, of course, you know, the Biltmore Forest Country Club. Now, at least the Asheville Country Club allowed members to bring guests. The Biltmore Forest Club did not allow Jews to even set foot on the property. It was built by Edith Vanderbilt, by the way. She got pissed off at the Asheville Club because they wouldn't let her smoke on the golf course. And so they didn't even let Jews come on the property. And there's a story that I got from a lady here in town. Her mother and father were refugees from Europe, from Germany, and just barely escaped the Holocaust. They came over in 1939 or 1940. They held the high school prom at the Biltmore Forest Country Club the year she was graduating. And she said I was all dressed up in my gown, and I had a corsage, and my date had a tuxedo, and he had a boutonniere, and we go marching into the Biltmore Forest Country Club, and they're checking names off. And they saw her name, and they said, "Are you Jewish?" She said, "Yes." They said, "You'll have to leave. We don't permit Jews in our club." Now, there's another story. There's lots of these stories. I've just picked a couple that I think we don't have enough time for all the stories about this. There was a beautiful young girl. She was very tall, and she was into modeling, and she belonged to a modeling club. And she wrote to me this story. One event that was scheduled for us to participate in was to model for the Biltmore Forest Country Club. Remember that the year was 1966. They asked for each model's name that would participate in the fashion show, and this was supplied as requested by our sponsor. We all were ready to go, and the organization received a call from the Biltmore Forest Country Club and asked if the girl with the last name was Jewish. And they asked me, and I said yes. They stated that I could not participate because they do not allow Jewish people at their club. It was a private country club, and they could decide who can attend any function and who cannot. Now, here's the interesting question I have. When I grew up, we were always invited to churches for events, weddings. I had lots of non-Jewish friends and various events. And sometime I would admire, I knew the people, it's what a nice church, how nice the music was, those kind of things. And they would say, "Wow, would you like to come and worship with us on Sunday morning?" And sometimes they got pretty aggressive. "We'll come pick you up." Now, this is the same people, and I knew some of them well, that belonged to these clubs, that this was the holiest place that they had, and they were inviting Jews there, but if we went to their country club, we were going to contaminate the country club. So this was always a question for me. The other part of the most important thing was that the membership of the country clubs consisted of the whole power structure of the area. They were the businessmen, the lawyers, the doctors, politicians, office holders, and they were the power structure. They knew all this stuff was going on. They never lifted their finger or spoke a word to say, maybe there's something wrong with this. And that was the thing that I guess was more frightening than the Ku Klux Klan or the Silver Shirts, was the silent treatment of the Jews in the community. I will tell you, I got a church story for you. When I came back from the Korean War, went to work for my dad said, "We've got an important customer. His daughter's getting married, and we're invited to the wedding." He says, "Now, it's going to be at a Baptist church, so there'll be no drinking, no smoking, and no dancing." I thought, okay. So we go We go to the wedding. The groom was a Marine, and his bridesmen, or whatever you called them, were all dressed in Marine, that beautiful Marine dress uniform that they had. And the wedding was beautiful. Then they had a little reception downstairs, and they had cookies and punch and all that stuff. And, you know, I smelled liquor, smelled alcohol on some of these people's breath. And I thought, there's something in one of those punch bowls. So I went around and tested the punch bowls. Well, that had an effect. I had to go to the men's room. I drank so much punch. So I walked to the men's room, and I opened the door, and the cigarette smoke blows out of there. I thought it was on fire. There was so much smoke. Then I get inside, and there's liquor bottles on the commodes and on some kind of shelf they had. And one of them says, "Come in, brother, and have a drink." So that's when I learned the difference between a Baptist wedding and a Jewish wedding. The Jewish wedding, or the Baptist wedding, they hold their cocktail party in the men's room. And by the way, I will say, I didn't see any dancing. When I came back, I was involved in a lot of fundraising in the community, primarily for Jewish causes, but also I worked with the YMCA and other things in the community. It just seemed like something I needed to be involved with. The United Jewish Appeal in those days was raising money to rescue Jews from countries where they were in trouble. And in those days, it was mostly the Slavic countries and Russia. They would get the people out and resettle most of them in Israel. They invited me, the National United Jewish Appeal invited me to join many other young Jewish businessmen who were active in Jewish philanthropy to become members of the National United Jewish Appeal Mission Society. And I flew around the country helping other communities put on their drives, helped them to solicit. We got lots of good training. We were introduced to the creme de la creme of Jewish leadership in the country. And we were quite successful. In 1967, in the spring of 1967, I got invited with the group to go on a mission to Europe and Israel to see what happened to our money, what we did with our money when we solicited. And the idea was we flew to 3 countries, and they had what they called absorption centers, like in Marseille. And they bring the Jews out and get them prepared and do their health thing, and then they would send them on to Israel. Well, this mission was scheduled for June 12th, 1967. And when they invited me, they sent me a nice shoulder bag, you know, like you carry on the airplane. Said, United Jewish Appeal, Young Leadership Council, that was the name of it. And I thought, I don't believe I'm going to walk through the Asheville airport advertising I'm Jewish. So I put it in my big suitcase, and I thought I'll just, maybe when I get to New York City, I can do it up there. Well, as all of you know, the Six-Day War, as they called it, broke out on June 5th, 1967. And it was amazing. The Jews defeated 2.5 million Jews, I think, defeated 100 million Arabs. It was a true David and Goliath story. And the results in the community were unbelievable. Up until now, our people had been leaders for 4,000 years. We had a language, we had education, we had medicine, we had music, we had theater, we had it all, but we were considered a meek, defenseless group of people. And all of a sudden, Israel wins this war in such a dramatic way. I've got non-Jewish friends calling me up saying, "Damn, Jerry, I didn't know Jews would fight." Or, "Jerry, you Jews just kick some real serious ass." Now that sounds funny, but you think about it, is that what it took for us to turn white? And that's what happened. We began to turn white. And we all of a sudden had some gravitas we never had before. We never spoke up. We kept our mouths shut when we saw injustices. We knew all about the people that would do us in at any opportunity, and we didn't want to make any trouble. It was such a great event that I think it was Time magazine put up a poster. John, will you show them that poster of Super Jew stepping out of a phone booth? And for years after that, some of my friends called me Super Jew. We were no longer quiet about racism. We were no longer quiet about the activities of anti-Semites. We spoke up. Give you an example of something that happened. And some of you may remember this. There was a high school football team in Texas in 1990, I think it was, or thereabouts. And the coach of the team insisted that the whole team had to kneel in prayer before the game. Well, some of the people who weren't Christians objected, and somebody took it to court, and the court found out that it wasn't legal, and they banned Christian prayer under those circumstances, under the auspices of the school. Well, the people who loved this the most were the evangelicals, because, boy, they had a cause now. You know, when the evangelicals, they love these things. Like if the women are walking topless down Patton Avenue, they fill the auditorium. Or if there's a gay pride parade, man, they're all out there raising hell. So, but interesting enough, they started a movement called We Still Pray. How many people remember that rally? There were 45,000 people trying to get in the Reynolds Stadium, and they backed up the freeways, and it was a huge rally. Well, I heard and read about it, and there was 2 county commissioners, both of whom were good friends of mine, both of whom I'd helped to get elected to the county commission. And they went there, and they stood up and said, "The county commission supports this, blah, blah, blah." And I was outraged. And I called them up, and I said, "You know, if you'd got up there and said, 'My name is John Doe, and I stand with you,' that's one thing. But you don't get up there and say, we're going to put this in the county commission. You just don't do that, and we're upset." And I said, "I want you, the 2 of you, to come to the Jewish Community Center and sit with members of the leadership of our Jewish community." and let us explain to you why this is hurtful to us. And they did, and we came and we had an excellent meeting, and everybody was on their good behavior, and there was no anger. We just made the case clear that this was not something that was acceptable to people who were not of the same faith as they were. Now I can tell you that had the Israelis not won that 67 war, had we not sort of turned, as I say, turned white, I would have never said a word to those guys. They would have never showed up. So a word about the 6-Day War. I don't think if there had not been the dramatic victory of the Israelis in the 6-Day War, there would not be a Jews for Justice, and there would not be a center for Jewish studies at a tax-paid university. So we owe the Israelis a lot. Now, we've got one more thing here. Marlene has been collecting my stories from the Mountain Express over the last 15 or 20 years, and every 5 years we publish a new edition of those articles. Those books are on sale here tonight. Everything, we're self-published, but all the money goes tonight will go to the 2 organizations who sponsored this. And if you want to, don't hurt yourself, but you can give a little more than $25 if you want to. I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. It's a great tribute, and I appreciate your kindness and your thoughtfulness, and I will answer questions.
So I also wanted to mention that one of the sponsors was Planned Parenthood, and somehow their logo didn't make it into the program, but we'll make sure that it gets into the video. So just want to also thank Planned Parenthood.
Thanks. I'm going to kick it off, and then we're going to collect and read some questions. But one of my questions, Jerry, is you shared beautifully a lot of examples of kind of needing to fold into its own community as Jewish community here in Asheville. And I wonder, from your many years, if you can share an example of kind of allyship, like when there was a time when there were other folks or non-Jews who really came together with Jewish people, as far as you remember, in Asheville.
Well, of course, the biggest incident I would say would have been the 6-Day War. All of a sudden, we were all one. And that would have been the biggest incident that I can remember. I worked with a lot of charities, and certainly the United Way, and we built the YMCA, and it was certainly a large mixture of both Jews and non-Jews active and contributing.
Can you talk about a story about the situation of when developers wanted to build a mall downtown, and there were Jewish groups that joined with others to hold ribbons to delineate the boundaries? Does this ring a bell about building a mall downtown?
It wasn't an issue I was involved in, to tell you the truth. I didn't know much about it. But the Jewish community did have a lot of businesses downtown, and very successful businesses. And people really loved their businesses, and these people worked hard to be friendly to the whole community. But I don't know much about that particular issue.
I'm going to do 3 more ones here, Jerry. This one is one I've been wondering too. So you are a big advocate for reproductive rights and women's rights, a big supporter of Planned Parenthood and other groups. Not that we have low expectations for non-women. But can you tell us what in your personal life has made you such a strong advocate for women's rights and particularly reproductive rights?
I grew up here and I've seen a lot of poverty, and I've been involved with different charitable organizations, and the most common, maybe the common denominator of this so much poverty is the fact that we have so many unwanted children who either the parents just didn't want them, they couldn't care for them, or they couldn't have cared less. And this creates so many problems because those children don't have good health, they don't get educated, they become wards of the state and wards of the community. And we charities, we folks who give a lot to charity, think that there should be some control of that, and women should have the choice to decide whether they want to have that baby or not.
What are you optimistic about in our future? You've seen a lot of changes in Asheville in particular, and is there anything happening here that gives you a sense of things changing in a positive direction?
Well, of course, it's a different world, and I grew up in the country club situation is entirely different, which is one of the points that I made this evening. They, as far as I know, accept people of all faiths and colors, and so that's positive. But also, there's a greater cohesion between people of different faiths. It's no longer all about whether this is a Jewish charity or this is a Christian charity or this is whatever. I think that the people in this community have come together, and we've done amazing things with our charitable organizations in this town. So I think we can be proud of that, but it's no longer, it's a secular thing and no longer a racial thing. Before you go on, there's a story I miss telling. And I asked this lady, remember I told you about the young girl who was modeling, and she wrote me another story about her growing up. Her father was a World War II veteran, and he flew missions over Europe during World War II. He came back and he opened a little, or he took over the family grocery store down at the foot of Valley Street, which is now called South Charlotte. Mostly the store's customers were black customers in the community, and when they needed it, he issued them credit for food when they didn't have the money. He was a generous, kind, and wonderful person. And she wrote me this story. I do remember a sadder time when the racial riots were here in 1969, and my father's store was bombed many times with Molotov cocktails, and the glass pane windows were being replaced time and time again until that insurance company refused to buy any more glass for the windows, and my dad had to put up screens so that the windows couldn't be broken. But during this time, it was hard for the Jewish families to help my dad. They were afraid that their businesses would be damaged as well. So anti-Semitism was not just limited to the white Christian community at that time. Now, if you don't believe me with this story, the person who wrote me these two letters is in the room tonight. I would like to ask the beautiful Wendy Hayner to please stand up. Okay, fire away.
Yeah, I want to appreciate both the history and how things have shifted. I know particularly with Carolina Jews for Justice, when we are experiencing hard things or particular threats, it's a lot of our non-Jewish, particularly Black and immigrant partners and allies and friends who really come circle around us and see our safety together in solidarity. So I want to uplift that some things remain and a lot of things change. And I'm grateful to be in the part of the movement that is pushing things in a different direction. Final question that is on, I think, everyone's mind. Did Zero Mostel sing in your house?
Not that I remember. I don't think we had any idea he was going to be famous.
Thank you so much. I want to give it up for Jerry Sternberg. Please. For a life well lived and the gift of sharing with a much larger community. Thank you so much, Jerry. Jerry's going to stick around for a bit and schmooze ancient Jewish technology and sign some books, and please stick around and connect with the people in this room. Thank you so much.